Andy Hiles, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for being here, and congrats on the book.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's my first interview since writing the book.
I feel honored.
No, it's lovely. Thank you. Yeah, no, all good. Good weekend. Just trying to get my head back into the Monday. It's just Monday all over again.
How does it feel now that it's finally accomplished? I can imagine that it takes quite a bit of work to get this to this point, and now you're here.
Yeah, great question. I keep saying to people, getting the book across the line was way harder than writing it. and that is given that I had a very good friend of mine, Steve Trapps, who I train, who's a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org. We train pretty much every class together now for the last few years since the pandemic, and even before we were co-training. And he had the poor job. I keep saying poor job, but he had the job of reading every kind of iteration and commenting on, could this be worded differently? Are you sure you want that there? Full stops and stuff. So he was kind of like my editor, which was so helpful. I barely got out of school with English. So getting it across the line was way harder. And the other thing I've been reflecting on, kind of based on your question, is how does it feel? I'm not feeling any different at the moment. I think I'm genuinely waiting for the Amazon reviews. Like, that's, for me, that's the trust pilot of whether I've done a good job. I'm getting lots of positives, but I'm waiting for the Amazon.
For the mass.
Yeah, because everyone likes an opinion, right? And so I'm just waiting for the opinions to come along.
Everyone likes a positive opinion.
Well, I like positive opinions, but everyone likes to have an opinion, and that's their opinion. But yeah, so yeah, no, it's a good question. It's been a lot of work. It's a long time coming, but it's good. I'm glad it's finally out there.
Doesn't it feel like a massive achievement?
Weirdly, no. I think because I finished the book probably a month or two ago, and it's there's a longer story to how we got to where we are with it. But I was meant to go a slightly more official route with a publisher, and that didn't happen. So it felt like a really big accomplishment about 2 months ago. so and then it was and then when that didn't go as well as I hoped, so it was then, okay, I've got to pick up the pieces and make this thing work. And go on to Fiverr. Fiverr's just an amazing product, right? Fiverr is just a beautiful product, but going on to Fiverr and finding people who can help format books, let's dedicate their life. It's awesome. This is like whatever you want out there. There's somebody on Fiverr who will do it for you.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. Now, the book is called Applying Scrum with Kanban. Did you write this book in a Kanban way?
Oh, good question. No, not strictly, but kind of. I guess it was. I didn't have a board, so no. I didn't have width limits, so no. I think it started out as I think I say this somewhere in the blurb bit, but I was lucky enough. Oh, it's in the introduction. I was lucky enough to be one of the first few trainers of the Professional Scrum and Kanban course from Scrum.org, and it's when that came out a few years ago, so it must be 2 or 3 years ago that came out. I was so excited about the course, having done it. Dan Vacanti was teaching it, kind of the course, the trainer one, and I ended up hosting it. It was kind of like a big event, so it was a really big deal for me. Got to have Dan Vacanti, teach the course. Anyway, so since then I just got super excited, right? So it was all the stuff. And this is the thing, right? So Scrum Masters, people doing Scrum, software development teams, Scrum teams, anybody who's been doing software development will have at some point done some Kanban-y stuff, right? But they haven't applied it in totality. So you might have limited whip. You might have put those funny little dots on the tickets, but not really what. That's like the stories in the book where you've got like I think there's a point at which I think there's it might be the product owner called Scott. No, product owner Steve, one of the developers called Scott, and I think he mentions, I used to put dots on tickets, but not really know why. And so some of the little things in there were things that I used to do, right? It's like, I'd heard once it was good to put dots on tickets, but I didn't really know what to do with it, right? You know, and it's all those little things. So, you know, people out there listening, Scrum Masters, anybody, you know, building software will have done some Kanban-y stuff. You know, certainly the board level. And it's just like a combination. It's kind of just putting that wrapper around it. Was the whole kind of purpose of the book. So yeah, it started out small and then grew to, well, it's not massive. It's a couple hundred pages, but it's significant. It's
fairly
enough.
Sized.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't. Again, this was. If I go back to the intention, the first intention was probably about like an 8-pager or something. It was kind of. I really wanted something. The whole point of it was to be practical. Right? The whole point of it was to tell a story, regardless of what that story was, but to be practical about it and say, do this, this is good, do this is good, do this is good. Right? Really, really simple, plain language. I think the hardest thing was trying to keep a lid on all the what ifs. Right? You know, the nuanced questions. Oh, what if, you know, the team can't break down work, and what if the, you know, they don't you know, manage WIP, etc. Well, I mean, we tackle that as a subject, but there are lots of what ifs you could tackle with this subject. The majority of the intention was to keep it positive, right? And keep it light, keep it positive, tell the story that not kind of from a make-believe perspective, but just tell a story about how you actually practically go and take Scrum and the Kanban guide for Scrum teams from scrum.org, and how you go and apply that. And what does that look like? What do you need to pay attention to? Right. And that's kind of how it all came together.
Now, you just mentioned this is the point of the book. That was the point of the book. Now, I have this open in the screen next to me. It says Applying Scrum with Kanban, and just below, a pointless book.
Yeah, do you know what? I won't. So the original title wasn't Applying Scrum with Kanban, and for various reasons it got changed. But the pointless book. So I put out on LinkedIn. Actually, this was Steve Traps and I. We were just kind of talking one day, and I said, "Look, let's 2 minutes, right? Let's just find all the most stupid names for books you could think, like along this subject, right?" Because I was really struggling. I can't remember some of the early titles. They were terrible, absolutely terrible titles. And anyway, so we were just playing with titles. Anyway, so one of the things I think Steve came up with was a pointless book. And yeah, again, the publisher wouldn't take that. They wanted other things. So when it became back to my book and my self-publishing, it was like, you know what, I'm going to go with the pointless book. You know, and I think probably your next question is why pointless, and it's
how'd you guess?
Yeah, yeah, I think where it's going. You know, so trying to tackle the story point question, right? That's you know, so this is all around. It's not a pointless book, but it's funnily enough, I don't think there's a page in there which doesn't mention story points in one way, but you know, the majority of the book is saying, look, this technique was created. So I'm hoping the majority of your listeners will probably understand what story points were and where they came from. In the book, I kind of dig back into the history of it a little bit, but it was taking that as a concept and saying, look, as it was intended, this kind of arbitrary method for understanding size, or well, the original intention was a padded. They were basically under pressure from project managers, and they realised what was taking 3 days was actually 9. So they created this kind of factor, and then that's where the story point came. Right? So that's kind of how it all formed. So unfortunately, because maths are easy, and this is the kind of where the kind of Dan Vacanti's work, certainly in the actual agile metrics and applying that to forecasting. People have used maths now to predict the future because everyone loves a number, and numbers work, right? It's quite easy. So one of the things I challenge in there is, and it's only one line. I should have made a bigger deal about this, but would you do the same with t-shirt sizes? Right? Would you exponentially? You can't, right? You can't say 2 smalls or a medium. Where do you draw the line? Is it 3 smalls? So that's where the pointless book side comes in. It's challenging forecasting and predictability that people are using through story points, which
it's kind of pointless.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, isn't it? You have a really good point with the exponential size of t-shirt sizes. But apparently we still are limiting ourselves to using these numbers as some sort of a forecasting tool. We want to feel in control. We cannot cope with not having that sense of we're in control. We know what to expect. This is exactly how it's going to happen. And that's 9 out of 10 times not going to happen. How does Kanban help with that, dealing with the uncertainty? So I guess one of the answers is talking about risk, right? Project management is all about risk, right? It's all about risk management. But the trouble is, the moment you start forecasting the future, risk management, when you start to apply numbers, goes away, right? And so when you start to look at metrics you can gather, so empirical data that you can gather around Kanban, such as things like cycle time and then generating your SLE, you can start to understand patterns. Okay? So this is the way my brain works, right? So it's looking at patterns of empirical data and starting to say, okay, is that normal? Is that not normal? What are the patterns we're seeing? Now you can then go kind of take that a little bit further and start saying, okay, so if we're going to go forward with how we're working at the moment, the number of people in the team, etc., what risk are we placing on the assumptions about forecasting into the future? Now, in the book, we talk about Monte Carlo simulations and a kind of advanced modeling in that. If you take kind of all the advanced modeling stuff out, that's really what we're talking about. We're saying we can't predict the future, but we have a bunch of assumptions, but we know assumptions are never good, right? So how much risk are you willing to bet on our assumptions being correct or not? So using the Kanban metrics, we can start to add a better conversation about risk management. And then the other side is looking at the way visualization and actively managing the work items in progress, which is just like the active management bit is just so crucial, right? You can have a board, but if you're not doing anything with it, it's just, again, it's pointless, right? So the active management of the work is so important. And there is an element of control in that. There's an element of discipline. So for the team, it's not about overloading yourself. But there seems to be this idea as well that we are really focused on actually doing the work, creating the product, creating that value, but maintaining the board and keeping our artifacts transparent is a lot harder in practice than we actually anticipate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I double checked this, and this is so I've delivered a few Scrum with Kanban courses since kind of the book's been in formation and going out there, and when I was kind of looking to get it on Amazon, I was kind of, did I say the right words? I've been so worried about saying the right words. But one of the probably more subtle lines in the book is talking about done. And if I could redo parts of the book, I would probably make a whole chapter on done. I talk about done and the importance of done, but there are some subtleties in the book where specifically talking around when you're looking at empirical data, if you're not looking at data that is, if you're counting data that is not done, you're not helping yourself. I'm trying not to double negative that, right? Basically saying if you're not done, it's not good. Right? So done is incredibly important regardless of what we're doing. Because if you're looking at that kind of forecasting, even if you're kind of just trying to actively manage the work, if you haven't really got a true sense of what it takes to achieve done, you're going to really struggle. And this is why it's kind of, that the looking at the workflow, the active management of work items in progress, looking at why done is so important, plus the metrics. This is kind of, again, bringing it all together. It is so important. And the hardest thing, I think, is enthusing the team to take ownership for this. Right? It's not a me thing. It's not a you thing. It's not a Scrum Master thing. I think, again, if I go back to the kind of the purpose of the book, I wanted anybody on any Scrum team to be able to pick up the book and take control. I didn't write it for Scrum Masters. It was just kind of easy having a Scrum Master in control, but I wanted anybody, the story actually, it's just Katie's brain, but the team take control in the book. And that's what I want. I want teams to take more control.
And that's how it's supposed to be. I mean, Scrum teams are self-managing, and therefore Scrum Masters shouldn't take control. A product owner shouldn't take control, or a specific developer shouldn't take control. It's the entire team who's self-managing. You mentioned Katie. Talk to us about Katie.
Katie, do you know what? I don't know. So I've worked with some fantastics, and I'm going to really annoy people I work with, but the best Scrum Masters I have worked with have tended to be women, right? I have worked with some fantastic, absolutely amazing female Scrum Masters, and I'll give a shout out to Gemma Honor, particularly from where I'm from, Bristol. Just as a fantastic Scrum Master, somebody I really, really respect. So, and I just I wanted to tell a tale about somebody who was an experienced Scrum Master, really passionate about what they do, which is kind of making their team's lives better, right? So, when the organization is horribly sucky around you, like trying to shield it, trying to just put, just kind of like back that way. Yep, okay, I understand. And trying to then figure out how to turn a team from, maybe struggling, right? Not making any assumptions, but, or could do better, right? So it's just performance enhancing, right? And so Katie came along. Yeah, I don't know where Katie came from. It must have been a kind of, I guess I just wanted to write a position that wasn't me, was further from me. But I had to tell a story, and we needed some people. And I think that's just kind of where it all came from, really.
Talk us through what Katie is doing. I mean, she has a really big part in this book together with the team. Just talk to us about the things that they're going through, how you tie that back to your practical experience.
Yeah, for those who are listening, go and read the introduction. And a few people who've reviewed the book said, "Oh, it's a little bit cheesy, the book and some of the examples." And I will say it again. The examples in the book pretty much happened, right? So right at the start, I talk about summarise the work. I won't name it. And every week they used to send an email, fill in your project time. And it was the most ridiculous thing. You'd have to split your time between project codes, like it mattered, because it didn't. And so, all that just stupid stuff going on. And then always when. And there's a photo somewhere, I think it might be on my LinkedIn profile, of me standing in front of a board in I was doing a talk at a meetup, and I've just got this big hand-drawn slide which just says when. This is 10 plus years ago, and I was just trying to answer that question, right? When will it be done? Because that's what everyone wants to know. So the book, it kind of starts at that position where you're and people recognize this, right? You've got an organization which is under pressure to make money, to deliver products, to make changes, to, enhance the world, whatever it is, but you've got pressure to deliver. And kind of, what we were saying earlier is the kind of the forecasting, we need to have, a date in a line in the sand, a date in the future. We need to have that, right? And it's that kind of level of certainty that people want. So the team, Katie is a Scrum Master, who's been doing Scrum for however many years. I've put experience, but, she's been doing Scrum a long time. And she's got a management team, which, again, may or may not have been real. Definitely no real names, but may or may not have happened. But they're frustrated, right? They're frustrated / shouty. And they don't know the answer either. Right. And this is the thing, right? So they want you to say the answer because they don't, right? And they need to go and tell somebody else. Anyway, so they're in that position, and Katie, much like me, goes to a supermarket one day, because I'm sure you've done it, right? You'll go. I mean, when I started looking into flow many years ago, I would walk into a Starbucks and go, why is there a big queue? Hang on. There must be a bottleneck in the queue, right? There must be a reason the thing is queuing.
I found out, by the way, that the Starbucks reason for queues are the unpronounceable names of all the cappuccinos they offer. So the start, and the thing is, it's why don't they just buy more coffee machines, isn't it? Et cetera, et cetera. So it's just trying to balance all those kind of weird thoughts. And so Katie just goes on this journey of self-discovery to some degree. I mean, it's kind of a little bit Phoenix Project-y, The Goal. If you've read The Goal, Eli Goldratt, you have a bit of help along the way. Everyone needs help. And so Katie meets a coach called Charlie, and together with her partner Ethan, they help her kind of facilitate the team in a change towards using more Kanban techniques with Scrum, and that's kind of the basis of the story. But yeah, the supermarket is where it starts. Now, there seem to be two factions, if you will, out there. Pro Scrum, pro Kanban. They're saying we can be combined. We're completely different. We're super unique, each one of us. Scrum with Kanban, though, is combining both. How do you feel about that split in those two factions?
That's a really interesting question. Right? I think if you really want to say, if you really want to ignore any good techniques in forecasting, workflow management, flow, kind of visualizing your definition of done, ticket management, etc., etc. If you want to ignore all of that stuff, limiting WIP and all those good things, just go do Scrum. But Scrum's not going to answer all your questions, right? And you're probably going to do them anyway, right? And so for the Kanban people, like if you really want to kind of just sit on that Kanban thing over there, that's cool, right? I've got no problem, right? Let's be clear. I've got no problem if you like one and don't like the other. Fine, just go and do that. But my argument is that so I call Scrum a conversation framework. So we'll meet every day for a conversation. We meet once a month at least with the team and the stakeholders to have a conversation in different terms, right, for different purposes. Kanban obviously doesn't say do anything, from an event type thing, doesn't say when to meet, who to meet, how to meet, doesn't have roles and have all of those kind of things. But you probably will meet on a daily basis because that's kind of good practice. It's not, I don't know, it's best practice or it's, it's like, but it's not bad. Let's just start. Okay. For the rest of this podcast, I'm going to say it's not bad practice, right? So, there's no harm in meeting once a month with your stakeholders to make sure you're doing the right thing. Kanban doesn't state you do, right? Scrum obviously does. But why would you ignore that as an opportunity for feedback? Right.
That's a really good question.
I like your question, but I just don't buy into one versus another. I'm very much if it works for you, do the right thing, right? If you're going to do Scrum, because Scrum has its rules. Yeah, as Gunther van Geen describes it, the rules for the game, Scrum has those. So you need the accountabilities and you need the events because they form that framework. And that's cool. So go and do that. And if you're not going to do all of it, don't call it Scrum, etc., etc. So, be pragmatic, do the right thing, but don't be surprised if you don't do Scrum properly. Don't be surprised that it's not going to work for you, right?
No.
It's not Scrum.
A split in that discussion always makes it feel very prone to extremism, in my humble opinion. Scrum also says, the Scrum Guide says, making relative efficacy of management and such in the broader environment painfully transparent.
Mm.
That makes it also very easy to ditch Scrum. Now, Kanban makes it even more visually transparent what's going on. For instance, with a cumulative flow diagram. Do you think that's why some people don't like it? Because it makes it even more painful and you just can't dodge it?
No, I don't think. I think so the cumulative flow diagrams are just ways of, they form a tool for a conversation. Are we doing the right thing? Are we doing the right thing right? In the right way. The biggest change in behaviour I've seen, certainly in the last couple of years, so since we've all been remote, because you imagine there were probably hundreds of teams out there who had physical boards and they suddenly had to go to Jira, right? So whether they went to Jira or not, some of the work I've been doing was transferring backlogs of work from wherever they were. Other tools are available. That's the right thing to say, isn't it? Other tools are available, Trello and all those kind of things. Yeah, thank you. But transferring them from kind of like physical boards to out of those and actually onto a more whiteboardy tools like Mural, and actually formulating backlogs on there, and also looking at workflows. So looking at program workflows and team workflows, creating canvases that show the totality of the challenge that's in front of them. That has been probably the biggest kind of switch for enlightening, the kind of opening up the eyes to, that totality of the amount of effort and work they've got in front of themselves. I think, I think you can always take a negative view on everything. But I think ignoring the positivity that these things bring, if it's going to cause you, if you want to be an organization that wants to hide all the truth away, I'm probably not the right person to come and work with you, right? Because A, I'll probably find it out and tell you anyway, and B, I'll probably make it transparent anyway, much like I've done in the past. Right? I've walked into organizations and just put work on the wall, right?
Rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely, right. Why is it hidden away in a tool that,
don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you had a really nice reference there about the mural board, creating that backlog, that visual backlog, which refers back to what you were saying earlier, that Kanban and Scrum are conversation tools. And I do feel that Jira is being treated as, hey, we're going to cram in every single detail that we possibly can. And then that shifts the focus from actually doing the work, adding the value to the comprehensive documentation that is less important, according to, for instance, the Agile Manifesto. I think that's a really interesting given that you just shared. Now we're going to start with doing Kanban. We are already a Scrum team. How do you recommend us to approach this implementation?
Yeah. So obviously read the book, but I think there's the myth that you have to start with where you are now, right? It could be that what you do now actually isn't very good anyway. So you may wish to start at a position where would we like, from a workflow definition, from a conversation definition, from visualization point of view, what do we want to look like? What do we want that workflow to look like? What could we include that we're not including at the moment? So typically it's, let's open up a conversation about our workflow. What does that look like? What activities are we performing? Where are we seeing inefficiencies in our conversations and our feedback loops? What could we do about that? And that should form a tool for conversation about defining something that follows how work moves from sprint backlog. Let's throw Scrum in here for a minute. Sprint backlog all the way through to done. Right, start there. Right.
Sounds perfect. I think that's one of the hardest things to actually start with. And that's the same thing with Scrum, by the way. If you want to start, where do you start? People seem to be very, very much focused on creating the right circumstances. What are the actual right circumstances? I
would say bonus tip, right? So the other way of looking at it is start at done and work backwards. Right. So have that conversation about what done means and then go, right, what what are all the things we need to do that we're not doing and the people we need to involve in that activity, right? So instead of looking forwards, also just, you can start at done, right? Work backwards towards that.
Definitely. Reverse engineer stuff. But it's the same with the vision. We want to go somewhere. The product goals, start with those and then see how you can work towards those. Do you think that Kanban or Scrum with Kanban is applicable in every single situation or every organizational type? Like Scrum and Safe, for instance, are being treated like the silver bullet, the one size fits all. You're going to solve all of our problems.
Oh, you're dropping the question there. Okay, I like that.
Good luck with it.
Going to drop that bomb. I'm not going to comment. I'm not going to comment on Safe. So we're going to just move. I'm going to avoid that landmine. Do I think it's applicable everywhere? I don't know. And this is the thing. I've yet to find a situation where visualization hasn't helped. Right. So visualizing and creating that definition of workflow, I've yet to find a situation where that hasn't helped. Like that is the kind of the baseline. Even if a definition of workflow exists, what about your upstream or what about your downstream? Right? Are you truly done? Do I think everyone needs to be Scrum with Kanban? No, because that's just stupid, right? So, it's, again, being pragmatic. Tools will work for certain teams in certain contexts. Some people may find it will work. Some people may not. And, but no, I'm not gonna say, no, it's absolutely for everybody and everybody needs to do this stuff. The one thing, and I think I put this somewhere in the introduction. Whenever I teach a class, and and even in the book, right, I always say, if you get one thing out of this class, whatever that is, I'll have done my job because I'll have answered a question, inspired you, changed something that you're thinking about, given you food for thought, given you an idea, given you a tool, given you a technique, whatever that looks like. That is my job to do. Kind of like as an educator. And so if people buy the book and read it and get one thing out of it, even if that's, I don't need to do that. That was a pointless book. But even if they get one, even if they go, do you know what? We're not using the Monte Carlo simulation to forecast multiple, batches of items, for future risk, right? We're not doing that. How do I do that? Right? That's my job done. I'm happy with that.
You just mentioned it would be stupid to treat that as just go blindly in there, basically. That does imply that you consider there are situations or contexts where you think this doesn't work. And that kind of refers to the core of my question. What circumstances do you feel Kanban and Scrum would thrive best? For instance, Scrum is, if you look at the Stacy matrix, it thrives in this complex domains. Does that apply with the same fact for Kanban, for instance? Is it easy to plot somewhere on the Stacy matrix?
So the answer to that is it has absolutely nothing to do with work. Right? It's got nothing to do with the type of work. It's got nothing to do with work in any shape or form. Okay, so let me rephrase that with like 90% of it has nothing to do with work. The 90% of the answer should be it's all to do with the people and the attitude of the organisation. Right? And that is it's the hunger for change. There's a story I tell in class, which remains nameless, but the shortest contract I ever had, which was kind of earlier this year, where we started genuinely having a conversation about tools, techniques, very Kanban, trying to help. They're already doing Scrum, perhaps not so well. How could you leverage some of the Kanban metrics to help you understand and improve? That was treated very indifferently. I'm trying to be very polite, and I was not treated very well. So their attitude and their want to learn, to change, to be better was just not there. So I don't think it's about, personally, I don't think it's got anything to do with the work. And I'll go back to, I wish for teams of people to take either the content of my book or at least go and have a look at the Kanban guide for Scrum teams and go and say, what is that telling us? What challenges does it place in front of us? What could we perhaps take from this and do better with? And that's the attitude part, and that's the behavior, and that's the people.
Awesome. I think that goes for a lot of the frameworks out there. It's so prone to the behavior rather than the execution of the framework itself.
Yeah. Blindly applying any tool and technique is not going to, you're not going to do things very well, right? You might, I was talking about this the other day, and I can't remember why or what or where it was, but it was the difference between learning a routine and understanding why you apply that routine. Two very different things, very subtly, but you can just kind of. I'm struggling to remember in what context we were talking about it, but it was something, a simplistic mechanical approach to things. You can just go and do that. Right? But actually really truly understanding the purpose and why you're doing that is the important bit, because that builds passion, and that builds it builds passion if it's passionate, right? Otherwise it's just boring. But you then start to work out, okay, is it boring? Is it serving us? Are we doing the right thing, etc.? So yeah, for me, it's a tool for a conversation. All of these techniques, the whole purpose of the manifesto, the Agile manifesto for Agile software development, as it should be called, as per their website. But that is just talking about behaviors. If you look down that whole list, just talking about behaviors, talking about attitude, talking about the way people behave, and the conversations they have.
Where do you feel then this obsession with finding that silver bullet that's going to solve all of our problems is coming from? Because we do not seem to get away from this concept.
No, and I think this is we as human beings, right? So we can go super deep with this, but as human beings, it's my belief that it's quite easy to look at. I'll go back to on that mechanical kind of concept. It's quite easy to look at a mechanical process, a repeatable, predictable process, and say, "Yep, that's going to happen the next time." Right. So it's that kind of. So in the book, it's the difference between deterministic and probabilistic thinking. As human beings, it's quite easy to look at processes mechanically and just say, "Yeah, that's repeatable. That's going to happen." When things border into uncertainty and then add complexity to them, we want to apply mechanical problem solving to things we can't control. And I know, Dan Vacanti talks about the weather a lot, and it's a great analogy, right? Because the weather, people, systems, so in the UK we have the Met Office, the meteorological office, who basically do all our forecasting. I don't know what it's like in the Netherlands. or what the name is. But we have that, and they have supercomputers, right? And they've got data going back for hundreds of years, I don't know, and they're constantly looking at the patterns of data to predict the future and looking at the way weather's shaping. But they're never 100%, and this is the thing. Still trying to apply maths, but looking at a percentage risk, they figured it out, right? They figured the best way of communicating it. What we do, software development, and actually I've been coaching into business process change, which has been really cool. I've really enjoyed that this year. Looking at trying to have conversations about will we get it done, but with a percentage risk that we won't, versus trying to go down that kind of, again, dogmatic, mechanical. Because I think everyone loves a plan, and because plans exist, we can attach ourselves to them. When you have uncertainty, it's very hard for people to become comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like being in the absolute pitch black dark. You don't know what's coming, and you just have to find out by actually walking. And just by turning even the slightest bit of light on, it gives you something to plan with. And it's really, it's almost scary if you don't have a plan.
Yeah, but we are, software development, 70s, like professional software development, 70s, right? We are 50 years, and we still believe a plan will work. I guess another question is, do all plans fail? Do all plans work? Like some plans become true, some don't. Yes. This is the percentage. Again, if you did some kind of probabilistic data analysis around plans that succeed and plans that don't, you would probably see a pattern there. And you could probably go and say, X% of plans are achievable. And I tell you what, this was an interesting one. So you've got a space shuttle behind you.
Yes, my Lego space shuttle.
So I was watching it was on the BBC UK national television channel, and they had a special thing about NASA sending people to Mars, and even NASA didn't know how humans would behave. Right? They didn't know how humans would behave in isolation for a long time, and the most fascinating part of that. So they didn't know how they behave, but also they didn't know how different personality types would match. So when you're formulating teams, they were having to do a whole load of data analysis and studies and again psychological profiles and all those kind of things around how human beings of certain personality types interact and trying to formulate amazing teams. Now, if NASA can't formulate amazing teams, what hope have the rest of us got? And so when you think about the success, what makes all of this a success? Is it the tools? Is it the techniques? Is it tools for conversation? And I'll just go back and just say, no, it's the attitude, it's the behaviors, it's the people. Then you apply the tools. Yeah.
And even indeed, like you said, if NASA is still in the dark with that, I mean, like you said, we're 40, we're 50, and apparently we're still afraid of the dark. It's just a different type of dark.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and the kind of the whole lack of plan, the whole lack of certainty is still a kind of what's the crisis in our profession? I think is one of the terms. I think that's a Ken Schwaber technical debt quote. I think.
Yeah, and I love that quote, by the way. Hey, what I really like, by the way, about your book, before going to the closing part, is that it's written in such a way. It's like you're telling it to the reader when they're sitting next to you in the pub. It's not that really theoretical, if this then that kind of approach. It's really the storytelling, the narrative behind it, and really easy to pick up and just follow along. And I really enjoy that about it.
Thank you. Yeah, and do you know what? If I so I'll tell you a little. I don't know how much time we've got, but so I wanted it to be conversational. I'm not. As you can probably tell, I'm not a kind of straight laced, I'm a creative. My brain's always all over the place. I'm always running at 150 miles an hour in my brain. I've got a copy. Like, this is a draft copy of the book. I was explaining before we started this that I still haven't got. People are buying. Amazon are sending people this book in like a day, right? I'm an author. I ordered my books last week. They're not coming for another week. It's ridiculous. So people are getting them. People are getting them quicker than me. Anyway, let me find somewhere in the kind of the whip when we're looking at the. So what I've tried to do. Oh, here we go. Here's one. Sorry, I'm trying to find a picture. So I hand drew a lot of these pictures in here. Nice. I hand drew. But when I say hand drew, that was with a mouse. No, that's not one of them. Where are they?
Mouse drew.
Here we go. Hang on, we got to get the focus. So this one here, I did in preview on a Mac. I mean, if when you kind of, this is looking at the aging work in progress thing. So if I had my way, and if I was better at using like a trackpad and a mouse, I would have had far more pictures in there to make it more conversational. It would have been conversational plus, right? I'd have had pictures. I originally, my original brain for this was I wanted pictures of Katie with the team certainly when we're creating the definitional workflow. I would love to have had the kind of artistic skills to be able to create a picture of like this person called Katie and her team. Again, just to bring it to life a little bit more. Maybe version 2. I'll try and get somebody to help with that and kind of expand it a little bit. Once somebody reviews it on Amazon, anyway.
So people can actually review your book, the actual book, sooner than you can.
They can. It's quite ridiculous, yeah. I mean, obviously, I've read the PDFs several times, and I was away on the weekend, and I took the draft book with me, and I was noting a couple of mistakes, and so in the kind of cool thing in the background, I'm doing some little iteration updates, or I have done. I've done the last one, thankfully. So they're not major. If you've already bought the book, they're not major. Just things that annoy me, and so no, so I'm still waiting to see. So I created the new cover. For various reasons, I created the cover, and I still don't know what. I'm colorblind. I still haven't got a copy of the book or seen the final book cover color, what it looks like in real life. It's silly. It is silly.
So you're a little scared of the dark as well.
Yes. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I'm so fearful. There's a kind of. I've had people review it, and people have been through it, and everyone who's been through it said it's a great book. But
I feel so too, man.
It's the ultimate put yourself out there. I'm super critical of myself, and so I've tried so hard to make this as good as it could be, and I think that's. I think passionate about it, absolutely, 100%, 110%, right? So passionate about this book, why it's good for people, why they should buy it. I put a huge amount of effort into making it the best I could. So I hope there's not, there's no glaring mistakes in there. It is what it is, and I hope people enjoy it.
I reckon they do. I'll include the link to Amazon because you already mentioned a couple of times you can buy it on Amazon. I'll include the links in the show notes. Last question for you. Where can people find you? Where can people interact with you?
Good question. So LinkedIn is pretty much kind of where I do everything. I'm over 40 now, so I don't do Instagram. I don't do TikTok. Do you know what? It was a couple of years ago, somebody said TikTok to me, and I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. So LinkedIn is probably the best thing, or you can obviously find me on scrum.org. You can find me on YouTube. I've done talks around. Actually, one of my most favourite talks recently, but it's an hour long, was with Nigel Thurlow and Kanban Dan Brown. And we talked about the role of a product owner within Kanban? Does it exist? And we got onto a whole load of other topics. So that's one of my favorite ones. And I was talking about the product owner being a coach for the product. They're not, I would like to see them less product owner. I'd like to see them more kind of a coach. But so yeah, LinkedIn is where you can absolutely find me.
All right. I'll include those links to people that can find you, connect with you, share their reviews. Speaking of LinkedIn, we're going to do a little giveaway. I'm going to post that on LinkedIn as well. And you had a question for our listeners.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what the question was. So I live in Bristol, in the UK. There is a famous artist that was born in Bristol. What is their name? What is their name? I was trying to think. This is a grammatically correct way of approaching that one.
What's the name of the artist?
What's the name of the famous artist from Bristol in the UK?
All right. I'll post that on LinkedIn. I'll post it on the masteringagility.org website as well, /giveaways. People who win will win a signed copy of your book.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Andy Hiles, thank you so much for being here. Hoping forward that you're going to have all the positive reviews that you could possibly get and that you have a chance to include all the work that you want to include. Thank you very much again for being here.
No, thank you very much for inviting me. I've enjoyed this one.
Me too, man. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.